The last part of calling it a design is to make sure the design is going to fit within the hoop that we have selected. The reason for this is we could accidentally have called in the wrong design, or we might have picked the wrong hoop for this particular job. In either case, we want to make sure that this design is going to fit. So we've already called in the design, we've already centered the hoop. So now, to get to the trace, we press the sub-work button, and then we cursor down to either the design trace or optimized trace. We are one of only 2 manufacturers that offers an optimized trace feature. And I'm going to demonstrate for you the difference between a design trace and an optimized trace. First, we'll look at the design trace. We take our up-down control right here, go down to number 2, design trace, then press the set button. It is now telling me in the display that I'm going to be looking at needle number 1 and to press the start button. I am now watching the relationship of needle number 1 to the hoop. As we look at that, we see that needle number 1 gets fairly close to the hoop. So I'm going to verify this by going down to the optimized trace, which is much more accurate. The regular design trace just forms a perfectly square box, irrelevant of size. The optimized trace will actually trace the outline of the shape that we are about to sew. So I am now going to go down to number 3, optimized trace, press the set button. It is now calculating all of the perimeter X and Y coordinates of this design. When it's finished, it will again tell me to refer to needle number 1, which means I'm going to look at needle number 1, and to press the start button to activate the trace. Again, we are looking at needle number 1 and looking at its relationship to the hoop. You can see during this trace, the hoop and the needle never come in close contact like they did before. This is a much more accurate trace, and I would highly suggest spending the few extra seconds it takes to calculate the optimized trace, therefore eliminating any guesswork as to whether the design is going to fit or not. If you would like, if you were to line up this design with a specific area of a particular garment, for instance, you wanted to put a design above a pocket and you wanted to see the relationship of this design to the pocket, while that presser foot is up, sometimes it's too difficult to see the relationship. So what you can do is grab the thread guide, that little piece of metal that the thread goes through, and push down on that until you hear it click. That will lock the presser foot down. You would never, never put that presser foot down when you do the trace the first time. This would only be after you've determined that this design we're going to fit, and now you're trying to get a better idea of the relationship of the design to your garment. So now I'm going to go back down to my optimized trace, press my set button again. This time you'll notice it comes up instantly because it does not have to calculate the X and Y points again, and press the start button. We're now looking at the number 1 needle. And we can clearly see that this design is going to fit within the parameters of this hoop without any trouble. Now that we know this design is going to fit, we want to kick that presser foot up. We first come out of the trace feature by pressing the previous button. And now I want to kick that presser foot up, and I simply press a different needle number, like needle number 2. The presser foot comes up. I fix my thread. put it back into the holding spring. I would go into work information, check the speed at which this is going to run. I believe this design should run fairly well at 800 stitches per minute, then press the start button.